If you suddenly could go back in time to fix any mistake, would you do it? What if someone close to you died, a friend or a loved one? And no matter how many times you go back in time, nothing would change. How long would it take you to fall into insanity? That's the kind of hard-hitting concept those two series deal with. These two series are the only two series that I would call true masterpieces that redefine the genre. No, anime as a whole. These two series have the most heart-wrenching and emotional storytelling I have ever seen. If you haven't seen this series, prepare yourselves, because I am about to present to you the story about a guy who dies hundreds of times and bears the suffering of the world but can't tell anyone about it, and about a guy who goes back in time hundreds of times but can't save the people close to him despite that. Before I talk about how those two series redefine suffering, let's briefly talk about what those two series are about. Steinsgate is about a guy called Okabe Rintaro who accidentally created a time machine through a microwave. Yes, you heard me right, a microwave. Okabe is a self-proclaimed scientist with his goofy group of friends in his small rented apartment, then tried to stop an evil organization called CERN that is currently developing a time machine. And with Okabe the main character being the only one that can remember the changes in the timeline after the time traveling, he is the key to stopping CERN from creating a dystopian future, which would rule the world by monopolizing time machines in the future. But it's not just the premise that's super interesting, it's the way that the anime executes that concept is amazing. The butterfly effect is explored heavily in this anime, and as the main character changes the past again and again and again, the person he creates slowly becomes unrecognizable when compared to the original timeline. This series loves to remind us every single episode that time travel is a double-edged sword, and oftentimes has more consequences than one can afford. In the scenes in which the main character realizes just what the hell they have done are absolutely bone-chilling. Every single character has a huge amount of depth to them and are really fun to watch, which makes the slower pacing a lot more bearable and interesting as well. And one day, Okabe hit a wall. Previously, every mistake could be fixed by going back in time, but this time, no matter what he does, he wasn't able to rewrite the past. But more on that later, let's get to Rezero. Now, Rezero is a series most of you will recognize. It's about a guy called Natsuki Subaru, who gets isekai into a classic fantasy world anyone would associate with the word isekai. Of course, a normal isekai just wouldn't be interesting, so there is a twist of course. Every time he dies, he comes back to a checkpoint, but the twist is he can't tell people he can go back in time or they die, which makes him a very lonely character. Similar to Okabe, his biggest priority is saving everyone around him, which proves to be very difficult considering he has like zero strength, like physical strength or like magic or anything like that. He's just pretty damn weak. Oftentimes, Subaru gets attached to the characters within the run, having some really cool moments with them, only for Subaru having to reset for all of these moments and character developments to be for nothing. Compared to Steinsgate, this series is a lot more simple and easier to get into, but Subaru's more complicated character makes up for it. Every death has weight behind it. Cause you know, even if you die 10 times, dying an 11th time will be equally as painful. So he doesn't just commit suicide because of a bad dialogue option he chose, or because he stubbed his toe, in this route at least. The author released 6 different routes, not including the main route, each of them representing a sin. And well, in one of them, the greed route, it shows what would happen if Subaru were to just repeatedly kill himself to get a perfect run every time. Each route gives a lot of depth to Subaru's character, but it does have major spoilers for season 2 of Rezero, so I'd recommend you to read it after watching that. Anyways, let's start talking about what this video really is about, their suffering. As he sees people close to him die over and over again, with there being no obvious way to prevent that miserable fate from happening, Subaru slowly breaks, almost going completely insane a couple of times, similar to Okabe, who hit a wall one day and wasn't capable of changing the timeline so that they wouldn't die. That process of seeing their psyche and mentality break is, I think, a very underrated concept, which uses suffering as a strong tool for story and character development. Now, although a little bit of suffering and hopelessness is good and all, in Rezero and Steinsgate, they do it to an extreme. Subaru is an amazing example of that. He gets eaten alive, tortured repeatedly, stabbed, and pretty much dies in every single way imaginable, and despite all of that, he still pushes on and wants a happy ending for everyone around him. Throughout that, we get to know a lot about his character and even his past before being isekai'd. And although we experience a lot of Subaru's lowest points, we also see a lot of high points for him. Rezero pushes two extremes of hope and hopelessness to its limits, and the amount of suffering he goes through makes the moments of him beating a powerhouse or avoiding an event that will kill everyone he cares about that much more valuable. Whereas in some anime you would think that the main character beats every foe they come across, in this anime it's almost a guarantee that he won't on his first try, which is a pretty exciting concept at times. Now, in Steinsgate, they show you the terrifying consequences time travel can have. As mentioned before, Okabe will hit many walls, and at one point, he also has to choose between lives. And that kind of reminds you that time travel isn't all powerful, nor can it solve all of your problems. It becomes so much of a curse to Okabe and the gang that they even thought of destroying the time machine a few times. Just by simply discovering time travel and hacking into CERN, his friends died over and over and over again. Expecting a different result after doing the same thing over and over and over again can be considered insanity. But what else could he do? Just like Subaru, he couldn't let a single one of them die. As long as he had the power to change the world, he would use it. Both of these series show what kind of power the indomitable human spirit can have. Now, since I'm pretty sure Rezero is inspired by Steinsgate, I'll just say Steinsgate was completely ahead of its time at its release. It's the first series I've seen that had used suffering as such an incredible tool for not just character development but also showing hope to a certain extent. It shows us that suffering is necessary in life. And without all of these failures along the way, and with the experience and toughness he gained throughout all of those changes to the past, the ending wouldn't have been the same as it is. Every setback, every step of the way had a purpose. It's the same with Subaru. Without him getting to know these characters throughout the many deaths, with only him remembering those experiences, he might have never been able to forgive himself for the way he was in his past life or look into the future from the person he was in the past. Overall, they both are timeless masterpieces that I think anyone who is even mildly interested in anime should watch. I'll most likely remember what kind of impact these anime had on me until the day I die. Getting invested into all these characters and rooting for the main character to find a way to save them had been a very emotional experience, which I don't think I'd ever be able to find in any other anime. It's sad, honestly, that most mangakas or anime studios try to replicate basic isekai premises or make mundane plots nowadays. It really feels like they care more about money than passion nowadays, which is, in my opinion, all that anime is supposed to be about. It's about the emotion you feel when you look back on it. It's about feeling the setbacks and the successes with the characters in it. And maybe even getting inspired and making your own work, who knows. But one thing is for sure, these two masterpieces have redefined suffering in anime. Thanks for watching.